Business Essentials Podcast. Unlock your career.
Learn to speak business English like a pro.
You know that sinking feeling when you completely disagree with someone's approach, but you also know you need to keep working with them? Most people either bite their tongue and let resentment build, or they just blurt it out and watch the relationship crack. I'm Marcus, and today we're unpacking the art of disagreeing without burning bridges. Sarah's here to explain why your brain processes disagreement as a social threat, the exact phrases that let you challenge ideas without attacking people, and why couples who directly address problems actually experience greater satisfaction than those who avoid conflict. Quick heads up, if you're working on your business English at B2 to C1 level, this episode is loaded with phrases you can use right away. Sarah, what makes disagreement so delicate?
Hi, Marcus. Great to dive into this one. Most people see disagreement as something inherently negative, something to either avoid or win at all costs. But research reveals that disagreement itself isn't what's destructive. What determines whether disagreement strengthens or devastates relationships is how it's communicated. In fact, collaborative problem-solving during disagreements reduces cortisol, your stress hormone, by 19% within just 30 minutes. And couples who engage in direct but respectful disagreement, using I feel statements, show 27% higher oxytocin levels than couples who avoid tough conversations.
So disagreeing properly actually increases trust hormones?
Exactly. Your brain releases oxytocin, the trust hormone, during responsive, collaborative disagreement. But when disagreement is handled poorly, your amygdala activates. That's your brain's threat detection center. It literally triggers the same physiological responses as physical danger: increased heart rate, narrowed thinking, defensive posture.
So your brain can't tell the difference between harsh words and actual threats.
Cannot tell the difference. When someone says, "You're wrong," your amygdala activates even if you know you might be wrong. The challenge to status triggers threat processing. And once your amygdala activates, your brain diverts resources away from your prefrontal cortex, that's your rational collaborative thinking center, and prepares for fight or flight. Rational discussion becomes neurologically impossible.
All right, so tell me, what's actually happening when disagreement goes wrong?
Great question. So your brain contains specialized cells called mirror neurons that fire both when you perform an action and when you observe someone performing that action. This extends to emotions. When you observe someone expressing emotion, your mirror neurons activate and automatically generate corresponding emotional responses in your own brain. This happens within 200 milliseconds, faster than conscious thought.
For our listeners learning English, what does mirror neurons mean?
Mirror neurons are brain cells that help you understand others' intentions and emotions by internally simulating their state. Think of them like neural mirrors. They reflect what you observe. In business, we talk about emotional synchronization and empathy activation when discussing mirror neuron function. When someone validates your perspective during disagreement, your mirror neurons simulate their openness, making you more open in return. But when communication is threatening or dismissive, your mirror neurons still activate. They just mirror defensiveness and threat instead of understanding.
So basically, harsh communication makes my brain prepare for combat.
Exactly. And here's where it gets more interesting. When you validate someone first, even while disagreeing, you're neurologically enabling their brain to engage with your perspective rather than defend against it. The physical act of mirroring emotional openness makes collaborative disagreement physiologically possible.
Give me an example. What does a bad disagreement look like versus a good disagreement?
Perfect. Let's do a workplace scenario. Imagine your colleague proposes expanding into the European market. Bad disagreement. You immediately jump in. Actually, I disagree with that approach because it's too risky. Your colleague immediately feels attacked. Their amygdala activates. Now they're defending, not listening. The conversation becomes about who's right, not about solving the problem.
So that triggers the threat response.
Completely. Now contrast that with a good disagreement. Same situation. Your colleague proposes European expansion. You respond, "That's an interesting approach, and I want to explore how it would handle regulatory complexity. Have we considered the compliance challenges in different EU countries?" Notice what's different. You validated their thinking first. Interesting approach. You framed your concern as exploration, not opposition. I want to explore how it would handle. And you invited collaboration. Have we considered?
That's a good phrase. Have we considered? How would you use that in a real meeting?
You'd use have we considered when you want to introduce a concern or alternative perspective without making it sound like an attack. It's collaborative language. You're not saying, you forgot about this, or you're wrong. You're saying, let's think together about this angle. Native speakers also use variations like, what about, or should we factor in? The key is the question form. You're inviting dialogue rather than asserting opposition. You might also say, have we thought about, or have we accounted for, depending on the context.
What's another mistake? What else do people get wrong?
Biggest mistake: using the word but to erase validation. So someone shares an idea. I think we should launch the product in Q2. You respond, I understand what you're saying, but that's unrealistic because… The word but neurologically cancels everything before it. Even though you just validated, but signals that everything you said was just preamble to your real position.
So the brain hears but as negation.
Exactly. Research shows statements using but have 35% lower perceived authenticity than identical statements using and. The right way is, I understand what you're saying, and I have a different concern to add. The vendor timeline might not align with Q2. Can we look at both timelines together? Notice the structure. Validation first. I understand. Then, and to preserve both statements. Then your concern. Then invitation to collaborate.
So and keeps both ideas valid.
Exactly. And here's another critical mistake: disagreeing on the person rather than the problem. So instead of, you clearly don't understand the situation, or you're being unreasonable, you'd say, I think we're interpreting the situation differently. Can we look at the specific data together? You've separated the person from the problem, allowing them to change their mind without feeling they've lost face.
Let's talk about the framework. Walk me through it.
So the framework is recognize, respond, reframe, resolve. Phase 1. Recognize. You identify disagreement as non-threat. Most people unconsciously treat disagreement as threat. Before you can communicate diplomatically, you must reframe disagreement in your own mind as an opportunity for understanding, not a competition you can lose. This prevents your amygdala from activating, allowing you to access your prefrontal cortex for rational, collaborative thinking.
So you're managing your own brain first.
Exactly. Phase 2. Respond. You validate and show understanding first. Validation is not agreement. Validation is acknowledgement that the other person's perspective makes sense given their information and values. When you validate first, you signal safety to their amygdala, allowing them to downregulate threat response. You might say, I can see why you'd be concerned about the timeline, because you care about meeting our commitments to clients. And I also want to make sure we have the resources to deliver quality. Can we talk about both?
So you're acknowledging their underlying value.
Exactly. Research shows that conversations where validation was paired with clear opposition maintained 40% more social cohesion. Phase 3. Reframe. You state your position as problem-focused, not person-focused. Instead of, you're not seeing the bigger picture, you'd say, here's what I'm noticing. The resource allocation might create bottlenecks in Q3. How do we design something that addresses both the timeline and the resource constraints?
That's a good phrase. How do we design something? Is that common in business English?
Very common. How do we design something, or how do we structure this, are collaborative framing phrases. They signal that you're moving from disagreement to joint problem solving. In business, we use design thinking language to reframe conflicts as design challenges. You could also say, how do we build in, or how do we create a solution that? The key is shifting from you're wrong to we have a challenge to solve together.
And phase 4?
Phase 4. Resolve. You collaborate on solutions or agree to disagree respectfully. This means brainstorming together without immediately evaluating ideas, looking for solutions that honor both people's core values, and explicitly stating what you'll try. You might say, "So let's test launching in Q2 with a limited scope, and we'll check in after 30 days to see if we need to adjust." Does that work for both concerns?
So you're proposing an experiment, not a permanent decision.
Exactly. And if disagreement is genuinely unresolvable, you can say, "I don't think we're going to see this exactly the same way," and that's okay. What matters is that we're trying to understand each other. Here's what I want you to know. You've released the pressure to agree while preserving the relationship.
Imagine someone's in a meeting where their manager is about to make a decision based on incorrect information. Walk me through how they'd use this framework.
Perfect scenario. So the manager is saying, "Based on the vendor analysis, we're moving forward with vendor A. They're fastest and most reliable." But you know vendor A actually has serious reliability concerns. Phase 1. Recognize. You pause. You think, "This disagreement doesn't mean my manager is incompetent. They're making a decision based on incomplete information. I can add value here." Your amygdala stays calm.
So you're framing it as helping, not attacking.
Exactly. Phase 2. Respond. You validate first. You say, "I know speed and reliability are our priorities, and those made sense as the selection criteria." You've acknowledged their values. Phase 3. Reframe. You state your concern as problem-focused. "I need to bring up something that might affect our decision. Vendor A's recent client feedback shows reliability issues that surfaced after their proposal. I reviewed 3 references this week, and 2 reported significant project delays. Should we discuss this risk before finalizing?"
So you're providing specific evidence, not vague concerns.
Exactly. And notice, you didn't say, "You're wrong about vendor A," or "You didn't do your research." You said, "I need to bring up something," and "Should we discuss this risk?" You're inviting collaborative evaluation. Phase 4. Resolve. You'd then say, "I know speed was your priority, which is why I'm raising this. If reliability is compromised, we might not actually gain the time advantage we're expecting. What would you like to do with this information?"
That's really different from just saying, actually, vendor A has problems.
Completely different. The strategic disagreement provides value, protects your manager from a bad decision, and maintains respect. The blurted version makes you seem adversarial and damages your credibility. And here's what's interesting. When disagreement is handled this way, managers actually appreciate the pushback. Research shows that direct opposition paired with collaborative intent achieves 65% problem resolution, compared to only 20% for avoidance or indirect criticism.
What about when you fundamentally disagree with someone's values, not just their methods?
That's harder, but the same framework applies. You'd focus on finding any shared values first. So imagine your colleague wants to cut customer support to reduce costs. You fundamentally disagree. You might say, "We both care about the company being financially sustainable, and I'm concerned that cutting customer support might actually increase costs long-term through churn and reputation damage. Can we look at other areas where we could reduce expenses without affecting the customer experience?" You've identified the shared value, financial sustainability, and reframed the disagreement as being about method, not values.
So you're finding common ground, even when there seems to be none.
Exactly. And sometimes there genuinely isn't common ground. In those cases, you'd say, "I think our fundamental priorities are different here, and I respect that we're not going to agree. I want you to know why this matters to me, and I want to understand why it matters to you differently." You're preserving the relationship while acknowledging the disagreement is real.
Before we wrap up, let's recap the key terms we talked about today.
Sure. The main ones were mirror neurons, collaborative framing, and reframe. Mirror neurons are brain cells that help you understand others' emotions by internally simulating their state. Collaborative framing means presenting your disagreement as building on others' ideas rather than opposing them. And reframe means stating your position as problem-focused, not person-focused.
Great. So our listeners can use these terms when they're navigating disagreements in meetings, presenting alternative perspectives, or maintaining relationships during conflict. All right, so the big takeaway here is disagreement isn't the problem. Undiplomatic disagreement is. The recognize, respond, reframe, resolve framework gives you the structure. Reframe disagreement as non-threat in your own mind. Validate first to signal safety. State your position as problem-focused, not person-focused, and collaborate on solutions. Research shows this approach reduces stress hormones by 19%, increases trust hormones by 27%, and increases problem resolution by 65%. Sarah, what's the one thing you want people to take from this?
Stop feeling guilty about disagreeing. The skill isn't about never disagreeing. It's about disagreeing strategically. When you validate first, use and instead of but, focus on problems, not people, and invite collaboration, you're actually improving the conversation and strengthening the relationship. This isn't conflict avoidance. It's direct engagement done right. Practice the framework and watch how people respond differently.
Here's what we want from listeners. Try the recognize, respond, reframe, resolve framework in your next disagreement. Notice when your amygdala activates and pause to reframe. Practice using and instead of but. Separate the person from the problem.
And if you've been avoiding necessary disagreements because you're worried about damaging relationships, this is your permission to speak up. Just do it diplomatically.
Next time, we're tackling something that makes even the most confident professionals feel a little awkward. How to ask for clarity without seeming incompetent. You know those moments when everyone's nodding like they totally understand, but you're sitting there completely lost? Most people just stay silent and pretend they get it, then waste hours trying to figure it out later, or make mistakes because they didn't have the full picture. We're breaking down why asking for clarification is actually a power move, the exact phrases that make you sound more intelligent when you admit confusion, the neuroscience of why people respect those who ask questions more than those who pretend to know, and how to clarify without derailing meetings or making others feel defensive about their communication. Whether you're in technical discussions where jargon is flying, strategic meetings where assumptions go unstated, or one-on-one conversations where you missed a critical detail, this episode will teach you how to say, "I don't understand," in ways that enhance your credibility instead of undermining it.
Oh, that's going to help so many people. The courage to ask for clarity is honestly one of the most underrated professional strengths.
Absolutely. It really is. Sarah, this was excellent. Thank you so much for all your wisdom today.
It was great being here, Marcus. And everyone, this week, try disagreeing with someone respectfully. Use one of those depersonalizing frameworks. Watch how much smoother the conversation flows.
Yes, try it. You'll be surprised. All right, everyone. Thanks for spending time with us today, and we'll see you next time. Keep learning.
Take care, everyone.
Business Essentials Podcast. Unlock your career.
Learn to speak business English like a pro.